Welcome to As the World Works. That's the Max and Daddy Show song. Thought it was appropriate because I have a very fun guest tonight. His name is Brandon Head. He is the owner and co-founder of Grapevine Crossfit in Grapevine, Texas. And there's my buddy Brandon right now. Say hello, everybody. What is up, my man? How are you?
I'm doing okay, man.
Fantastic. So Brandon is the founder of and owner of Grapevine CrossFit, where we met probably in 2011. And 2012, I did my first Murph, which was grueling. But I learned a lot from this guy. And one of the main things I learned, not only is he an entrepreneur and has several other things going on in his world, but is consistency and tenacity and so many other things you can try to articulate. But this guy is exemplary of what it means to stay the course. So I'm really happy to have Brandon here tonight to talk about life and to talk about what it means to go out on your own as an entrepreneur, right? So you started in life as you got your degree, you knew the blueprint, business finance, you worked at a bank, and then at some point you stepped out, and I'd like you to tell us your story.
You told everything that needs to be told. I'm going to pat myself on the back and go ahead and walk out.
Very nice. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Brandon Head.
Yeah.
That's all that needs to be said.
We're good. Thanks for the short podcast. We can move on. Yeah, man. Thanks for the intro. I appreciate it. So yeah, graduated from North Texas with a finance degree in 2006. Worked for the bank for about 6 to 9, so 3 years. 6 to 9 months, and was introduced to CrossFit in 2006 ish, right around there. Kind of just fell in love with it. They had a cool system for doing kind of garage studio style gyms, really rugged, all that stuff. Was kind of into Jim Jones as well. For anybody that doesn't know where that is, it's up in I think Utah, but they were the guys that trained the people on the 300 movie. And their gym, how it was outfitted, was really sweet. The original CrossFit gym was really awesome, and it just appealed to me in that aspect. And they were doing affiliations starting at some point, I think 2004, maybe 5. So over the course of probably a couple years, had it in mind, made a business plan just for the heck of it, and kind of just held on to it. Met a dude in 2008 that had kind of the same idea. He saw me doing CrossFit in this little gym in Flower Mound called the Health and Athletics Center. Asked me about it. Was like, hey, are you doing this stuff? Yeah. And we just got to talking, and we decided that the owner of that gym would like to see something like this in the gym, and we were going to work that out. Turns out that guy was full of shit, and he was selling his gym to Lifetime Fitness, and that whole thing went under. And so this guy had to exit and open his own gym 2008. I helped him with that in Louisville, and was there for a year, and finally was like, all right, I've done this for a year. I've wanted to do this. I need a jumping off point. Here we go. I've seen some stuff over the year that I feel like I can make some adjustments to, do a little bit better, and put in my 2 weeks notice at the bank in 2009, July. I'm kind of doing this abbreviated. I could really go in depth with this if we want to, but
we got time. We got nothing but time.
It's a little bit cooler story than it sounds. And so before that, before actually putting in the 2 weeks, we were driving around Grapevine, and for some reason, I think we were cutting through, going somewhere, and I came across a building, our first building that we were in, and it had a for rent sign. And I was looking around Grapevine because it has, quite honestly, it has a higher median income, and nobody was there. Southlake was kind of the next guess, but Southlake was really stingy and had some hard lines on gyms and people coming in with the type of stuff we were trying to do. And they weren't going to allow it, not to mention the rental rates were a little bit higher. So found Grapevine, and nothing was available that I could find. And we were driving through there to go to this some event or something. I said, well, let's cut through Grapevine because we've been looking at it. And happened to just drive past the place that we ended up at. It had a for lease sign. It wasn't listed anywhere else. And on our way there, I called the guy, and he was like, hey, I can meet you over there in 10 minutes. Okay. Met us over there. We were late to wherever we were going. I walked the whole place, looked at it, shook his hand. He sent me a lease agreement. We looked it over, and the next day signed it. And then a month later, we were open. So after I signed that lease, I went to work the next day, and I was like, hey, I'm leaving. I'm going to open up a gym, and I'll see you later.
So this is like you said, if you could dive deep into this, this is a really interesting concept for the life of ages, I think. But particularly now when people are trying to find out, who they are, what they're going to be in light of the world today. And so stepping out is a brave move. I'm interested to hear what that trigger was that said yes.
Yeah, good question. Probably at some point before that, I can't pinpoint the day, I was a commercial loan analyst for the bank.
So you did underwriting?
Yes, American National Bank in Flower Mound. And I was working on a client's portfolio, and I looked up, and I was in this little area that wasn't the greatest. It had I was isolated. The lineup for that bank, the potential for that bank would have been really nice, right? We had some of the older guys that were the VPs that were out of there within 2 or 3 years, basically lined up for that within that amount of time at a lower VP level. And then it just would have been cush. I could have played golf and went out and chased down clients and just hobnobbed with all those people. And then over a period of time, been a senior VP, potential bank president, yada, yada, yada. So the forecast for that was really good. And it just was like, I looked up and I was like, I don't want to fucking do this at all. I don't want to be in a cubicle. I don't want to play golf with people the rest of my life. I don't want to chase down clients and talk to them about their financing or why they need bank stuff. And I said, I'm going to do it. I have this whole thing laid out. I had a plan, what do they call that? I'm drawing a complete blank. The business plan. And there really was no downfall. At that point, it was really cheap to start a gym. It still is cheap. Just some people decide to go completely overboard. I think when you're starting anything, just as a side to this, start with as minimal stuff as you can and investment so that you can see if it works. Because if you start with that minimal investment, you actually have a chance to put in the work and see if it's going to be successful versus throwing a bunch of cash at it and then finding out it's not successful. It's another story in itself. But the cost was low. So for us, it would have been basically a car payment to get rid of that money. So if it failed, it wouldn't have been too detrimental. It could have paid off in a few years, no big deal. And then
Hey, Shelly.
But the projections, because that was my background, I could do financial projections all day long, and that was the fun stuff. The projections made sense, and it didn't take a lot of people to be successful. And I planned it out over, a couple years. And then when we opened, it was like 6 months. It just went, here's what I projected, because projections are just guesses anyway. And it went like this. And then it kind of petered out.
Right?
Do what?
This is 2009, right?
Yes, July 2009. So the defining point was at some point before that. I mean, it wasn't the day that we drove through there, but I did know, because I had this plan in place, I had been thinking about it for about 2 years, and finally was just like, I just had it. I saw my future, and it wasn't banking. I didn't know really what it was. I was wanting to do the CrossFit thing for very different reasons then than now.
What? Yeah, get into that. What were the reasons then? What was the for me when I joined CrossFit? Just sidebar, I don't do CrossFit anymore. I do some variations, but for then, for me, it was the culture, it was the tribe, it was the brotherhood, sisterhood, it was the rogue underground idea of this is not just unique, but it was kind of a bond, and then it became something else. But as a leader in that arena, I always admired you for setting the tone for that. And it hasn't vacillated, although I know the industry has changed. By the way, Brandon, a year ago, started with me. So fast forward, we met 2011, and several years later, I was on a big mission that was sort of self-imposed to, attempt 100 miles for the Bird's Eye View Project, a veterans and first responders charity. And I immediately went to him to say, help me forge through this journey, because I knew this guy would understand what it's like to never quit. So what's the difference now and then, from the onset, from not only a business perspective, because actually this conversation started, as as the world works, is about it started with commercial real estate, right? And you're a tenant, and you've had those ebbs and flows in that world. You just talked about having seeing the for rent sign off market, but the bigger picture is the individuals that occupy space. And I want to get into what space means to you, what intrigued you really about CrossFit in general, about running your own ship, and influences along the way. I know you read a lot. I know you're diving into your self journey and understanding what that means to succeed for yourself and those around you, and what and how you've traversed, and even today, what that means.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'd start that with the thirst for knowledge and personal improvement has definitely gained some traction over the last few years. It was always there at first, and it's changed paths. So where it started with the fitness piece, which it needs to be if you're going to be a fitness coach, right? I had the background in business. I kind of knew what was going on in running business. I didn't know shit about running a company.
Yeah.
but I had a
Who
base plan,
does?
you know? Yeah. And I'll probably vouch for this. I had more knowledge because of my degree in that respect than some of the people that go and start a business because they like what they do and they have no knowledge of business, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people in our space that start gyms because they love coaching people, but they have no clue how to run a business, and it's very detrimental to them. That said, I had the business piece, so I had to work more on the fitness piece, but that's what got me into CrossFit. I loved the people that way back when on CrossFit.com, they used to have a forum. And that's where I met all the original folks that were big names in CrossFit then. Some of them still are. But old school forums were where you used to go to talk to people and find out about stuff and meet people. You know, it was really, Facebook wasn't really huge then. It may have been, I just wasn't in tune with it, but it wasn't that big. Not as big as it is now, obviously. And so were you a part of any forums?
No, I was just following your lead. I was
Really?
just, yeah, I
Man,
was just,
forums were the tits, man. They were awesome.
yeah,
So that's
yeah.
where we dive in for stuff and you get to know people. And so that's where I originally saw kind of the culture aspect of what CrossFit was bringing to the table, which is what most gyms give. You see all the videos they used to put out, you'd see that kind of that group vibe, that community vibe. And that's what really attracted me to want to open my own place. It wasn't the fact that CrossFit was good and it was beneficial to people and I really liked it. I didn't know shit about training people, which is what most people do. I learned that a lot of that along the way. I've got enough tenure now with all of this and I've made a lot of mistakes to be able to learn from those. And I had an idea with respect to that about what we would do. And so I say that because where it started from the community culture aspect, it developed into a want to really help people. And that was after seeing people's struggles and finding out different things about them, learning more about my own personal struggles, learning more about mindset stuff, nutrition. And that's where all this studying and reading comes in, because without any of that, my growth wouldn't have happened and we wouldn't have been or be where we are today. And I wouldn't have been where I am today because of that. So I think it's really important for folks to understand that whether you're running a business or an employee in a company or anything like that, the personal growth aspect and always trying to figure out more, not necessarily within your company, but everything is really important in whether it's dealing with people, your industry, yourself, all that kind of shit. And so we focused really hard at the beginning to create a dynamic around what we did. And that was always kind of throwing parties, making sure people were kind of at the gym at all times, whether they were just there to have fun or working out. It kept us occupied too. And then once we started seeing kind of the repetitive issues with people, where they were falling short in their nutrition, where they were having issues with their movement, then that's where we started diving into those pieces. And that's how you become a better coach, is by learning those kind of things. And then I found out that I kind of had a knack for both assessing those and figuring out ways to help people through that. All that said, that takes a lot of time too. So the biggest kind of downfall to all of that is getting people to understand that this stuff takes time.
Can you go too big too fast?
Yeah, you can. I've seen a lot of that along the way, and whether that's with a business or with yourself, very much so. So we have really, really, really honed in on, over the past few years, on a habit approach to literally everything. right? Your habits are what really define you. And that took a long time to learn that, especially with myself. And I think having figured out a lot of that about myself helps translate that execution into other people. So we got, as a gym, we got really big back in 2012, 13, 14
Missed it.
timeframe. Huh?
Missed it.
Yeah, you disappeared right around then.
Yeah. Had things
Those
going
were
on.
like, that's what I would call the kind of the golden years of what we were doing. Okay. So CrossFit was really underground, like you mentioned earlier.
Yep.
Prior to that, 2003, they were first on the map. I think their first affiliate was 2004 up in Seattle. And then 2009, when we opened, we were one of 15 or less in DFW. So to put that in perspective, the high point on that number in 2017 or 18 was about 180 affiliates within DFW. Now they're down to like maybe 150 or so, but we had less than 15. And so the closest person to us, we're in Grapevine, the closest to us was Addison and Fort Worth, which respectively are about 25 miles a pop in both directions.
So we're going into a different direction than I was, and that's what I love about this forum is you can go chase any rabbit you want, right?
Right.
So
we could totally pull a Joe Rogan on this thing, man, and talk for 3 hours.
this is happening right now. Sidebar. How do you defend CrossFit? Right? Even in yeah, there you go.
Can we get into that a little bit later?
Sure.
Can we backpedal on that? And let me answer the bit too big, too fast, because that will tie into the CrossFit thing as well.
Yeah, no. And so not at your box, but at another box, it went too big, too fast, and there wasn't enough supervision. People were doing Olympic lifting way too fast, going through fundamentals way too fast, not understanding the movements, and people got hurt, including me. So it's a turnoff, but everybody really gets fired up about something that is, everybody gets fired up about something that they think is going to be the thing that is going to make them different overnight, right? So, but that's what I talked about you earlier. It's consistency.
Yeah.
And this applies to business, culture, humanity, and the individual. And what you and I, when we reconnected after several years last year, it was what's the word I'm looking for? Synchronistic, whatever. It was a good time. Serendipitous. Yeah, because we were on a similar path on an internal journey that came out and manifest in various ways that we had lived very similar life and life experiences. But the main thing is that we were both diving deep continuously into this inner journey that expressed itself in an outward expression. I'm going to go deep for a second. We can talk about Alex for a second. I didn't know him very well, but ironically, I ended up in this veterans first responder bird's eye view project charity that I was on the board of. And, sort of unbeknownst to me, I was training really super hard to be part of a brotherhood that I had never identified with, but I found that in CrossFit in your box. And there was this guy that really emulated that way back then in 2012. You want to talk about Alex for a second?
Yeah. So Alex is actually the guy that got me into CrossFit. It got me back into actually getting in shape. So it was getting in shape first, and then we found CrossFit, and then we did that. So I met Alex through North Texas in my fraternity, and let's see, 2002, we were pledge brothers. 2002, so fast forward to like 2004, I think, maybe 5. I had put on some weight from partying a lot, eating like shit, and just overall being unhealthy. And college life, though, and I was leaving my house one day down in Dallas. I used to go visit my dad a lot. We'd hunt together and all that shit. And I was leaving one day, and he said, "Hey, you putting on a little weight?" And
This is your dad?
yeah, my dad.
Yeah,
Put on a
that's
little
always
weight.
great
And
to hear.
what's funny is I've seen it and I felt it. And it wasn't just a little bit of weight. I cruise right around 180, 185 pretty solid, and I have since high school. You look at a picture for me in high school at 180 to 185 to today, it's two different people, even at the same body weight. I was always kind of a little bit, fluffier and not a lot of muscle mass. And I'd worked my ass off for years to try to get any amount of muscle mass on me. But I was fat, dude. Like I hit like 220.
Yeah.
And an extra 40 pounds in my frame. I'm a taller guy. I'm 6 foot, 6'1", somewhere in there. It just doesn't match. And
Right.
so you could tell, and I go back and look at some pictures that I have, and I'm like, yeah, dude, like my face is big. I was wearing, like, I think I got up to like size like maybe 38 pants, which aren't super huge, but I go put on some 38 pants now, and there's a substantial gap in there. And I was just uncomfortable. So he told me that, and it kind of hurt my feelings because I didn't really realize it, although I did. I was just denying it maybe. And that, I think I went out to go get shit-faced that night, and Alex was out at the bar, and I was like, all right, dude.
Alex Viola.
Yeah, Alex Viola, Staff Sergeant.
Viola, pronounced.
Alex Viola, U.S. Army. He was out at the bar, and he was training for the Navy. He was going to try to go into the Navy as an officer, which is really hard to do when you're trying to get a BUDS billet. And it's very competitive. So he was an engineering major, had to get all of these letters of recommendation. So his timeline was kind of pushed out. Like it wasn't like he was training and then going to go do this in a year. It was like, I got to graduate. I got to get all these letter of recommendations. I got to keep my PST scores up, so on and so forth. And so I knew he was doing this, and I was like, hey man, I'm going to come work out with you. And he was like, bullshit, dude, come on. And I was like, no, let's do it. And we went out, and that next day he was up at the track at 7:00, and I got up there at the track at 7:00 and was hungover, and we ran. And that was the fucking start of it. And over the next year, and it might've been quicker than that, I started working out. I couldn't do a single pull-up. Running fucking killed me. The first like 3 weeks of running, I rubbed the inside of my legs so raw because they were fat legs rubbing together, man. So raw, I didn't know what the hell was wrong with them. I thought I had some weird like fungal thing going on. Turns out it was just I was larger in that area, and they were rubbing and turning into blisters and stuff. It was so nasty. And I just, while I wasn't super consistent all the time, I knew what I had to do. That's where I started learning about these things. I started studying how I could be healthier, what to kind of eat. I played around with a lot of different diets at that time. But mainly intuitively, I might add, prior to this, it was a lot of chicken, a lot of vegetables, and a lot of just home cooked stuff. I stopped eating out. I didn't cut down on my beer consumption at all, but I just stopped eating like, hey, it's 2 a.m. Let's go get hamburgers and all that kind of stuff. And so we started training together. And then a year later, I was never a school dude. I didn't like school. I loved college. I hated going to class. And I was sitting around one day and we were having some beers, I think. And I was talking to Alex a little bit about buds, and I was like, man, fuck it, let's go. They had a buddy program where you could sign up with your buddy and kind of guaranteed a spot type thing. It was a little bit different for us because he wanted to be an officer, and I didn't have the schooling for that. I wasn't going to be smart enough for that. So I was like, well, all right, I can do it on my own. And we were doing that. The problem is I like to drink too much, and I got in trouble. And that put me way back. And then in 2006, we were talking about the movie 300. What these guys did to get in shape, which a lot of people found CrossFit through that movie. And found Jim Jones. Jim Jones was like, oh, so-and-so, Greg Glassman, CrossFit, all this stuff. This is what we do. Found CrossFit. Our first workout together was Murph, because we'd been training running, pull-ups, push-ups, not so much squats, but there's this guy named Stu Smith who trains kids to get ready for buds. And so we did a lot of squats too, just not in that volume. But he has a lot of books out that had that stuff. We're like, fuck it, this workout looks really cool. This dude was a SEAL, didn't know much about Murph at the time.
A lot of running.
Yeah. So it's a mile, for those that don't know, it's a mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, and then a mile run. It's a fun workout, but for your first time to ever do it, we looked at it like, we're strong. We can do this. It crushed us. And we were doing strict pull-ups, which, the CrossFit style pull-up is usually what we call a kipping pull-up, a little bit different, more efficient. But by the time we got to the end of it, just fucking torn up hands. They were bleeding everywhere. We were like, what was this?
There's a guy that did 16 of those this year, right?
Do what?
Guy that did 16 of those this year in 24 hours.
It's insane.
This is your first one. Got it.
Yeah. So we got done. We were like, this is awesome. And I never looked back from that. I started following CrossFit.com. I still have to do a lot of running. I was still training for the Navy to do all that, even though I had gotten in some trouble. And
you've said trouble twice.
Yeah, I got pulled over for a DUI. Or I got pulled over and then got a DUI. Got that talked down and worked down, and ended up having like 12 months probation. But the kicker is I did it again. And I did it the second time up in Colorado.
That's troubles. That's not just trouble.
Troubles with an S. Yes. And they popped me for that, and 18 months probation. And it altogether pushed out my timeline by like 2 years.
So you're full on. I didn't know this about you. You were going to buds.
Yeah. No, we had the conversation. I was working with a recruiter, and even my lawyer. Like, we had conversations with the recruiter and the lawyer up in Colorado, because I was kind of out of the area, like a couple more months here in Texas, and I was going to be free of this shit down here. I did all the stuff I needed to do. I got all the paperwork. I got letters of recommendation from people, and kept my PST scores up so that they would just keep talking to me. Went to a PST every month. That's the physical standards test there, where you do a 500 meter side stroke swim, max pull-up or max push-ups, max pull-ups, max sit-ups, if I recall correctly, and then a 1.5 mile run. Did that every month, and then was on spring break up in Colorado and just foolishly tried to drive right down the block because it was cold as fuck and I didn't want to walk. And my car slid a little bit, got pulled over there, got in trouble, and ended up with another 18 months. Within that 18 months, I met my first wife, and things kind of changed course. Alex went to Buds, and I ended up owning a gym.
So where did Alex go at that point?
He went into the Navy, He got his billet for a lieutenant going into buds. Went through boot camp, went through OCS, and then went to buds out in San Diego. And then Hell Week, he ended up a couple days into it, got dropped. They dropped him from Hell Week. They kept having some problems. He was not a super tall guy. I think he was on. He kind of got intermediate. They have what they call a Smurf crew, right? It's all the short dudes. He wasn't quite in that one, but he was a shorter dude that he said he kept getting popped for ducking, what they call ducking boat, meaning he's not carrying his load when they're carrying boats. And for anybody that knows the guy, that guy's not like that. That guy always did more than he could handle. So whatever it was, they dropped him from buds. So dream gone right there.
Yeah. Yeah. When I met him, so fast forward and you can fill in the gaps, but he was always for a year when I was training for SEALFIT for Kokoro camp, he found out that I was doing that. He was just like, he was also training for another special forces team, and he would always, like, quiet, humble guy. He would always be like, let's go, man. Let's go. You got this. You know what I mean? He was always just like softly pushing you, and just like, anyway, I remember him as a very humble servant kind of guy that was, so anyway, fast forward to he didn't quit, right? He just kept going.
No, they dropped him. And so that left him on a kind of a 2-year hiatus from all of this. He hung out in San Diego for a bit because he didn't have anywhere to go. They just let him hang out there. He had some chores and some duties. And then he talked to a Army recruiter that said, hey, we have this thing called a blue to green transfer for people in the Navy. And a lot of it works out when, if you're in the SEALs and you don't get another shot, we can take you over at the Special Forces school over here and get you going with that. Army allows a little bit older folks. He wasn't that old at that time, but he was, Buds likes to have the 20 to 30-year-olds that are basically impossible to hurt. And then the Army, I think, branches out to 35 or so. But I don't remember what age he was when he went into the Army. He made that transfer. So he went into the National Guard and was stationed in Fort Hood, I think, to start. And then went through all the stuff, and we're talking 4 years. 4 years of going to school. He dropped down. He was lieutenant in the Navy, dropped down to some, basic bitch level in the Army, worked his way back up to staff sergeant over the next 4 years, went through jump school, dive school, got his, the Q course, went through the Q course first, infantry stuff, jump school, Q course, dive school, and a couple other really cool things that he got to do with that. Then was stationed out in Florida, and 4 years of that stuff, trying to get onto a team that was going to ship overseas. He wanted to go overseas. That was his whole goal. And finally got that chance. I think it was 2014. No, it was 2013. 2013 got that chance, and got there in probably the end of October, early November. Fucking there 2 weeks, and they were out on patrol, and an IED or something. It was either an IED or I think somebody was watching them, and their group got hit by an IED, and he was severely injured and died in the hospital that next day, I think.
First step on foreign soil. First tour.
It may
Green
have been
Beret.
his first or second actual outing.
Ranger. What was his Green Beret, right?
He's
Yeah.
Green Beret, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was upsetting. The cool thing about all that is that he died doing what he wanted to do. It took fucking 8 years to get there. 8 years of solid fucking work, but he never gave up. He was kind of in that hiatus out in San Diego, but he was trying to figure out ways to move on from that. Apparently the military moves really slow in some aspects.
How did that change you, Brandon?
He was a good friend, especially there towards the end. So again, we met in 2002 and we'd known each other for about 10 years. When he died, 11 years, actually it was 2013. And the last 4 years, when he went to the Army, he was actually, once he finished up with the initial stint, since he was in the National Guard, he lived in Keller with his parents because he only had to go do the two weekends or a weekend a month or something, whatever the National Guard thing is.
Right.
And so he'd come up to the gym all the time. And that's when you probably saw him. You showed me those pictures today of Murph, and he was living in our area, but he'd come to the gym 6 days a week, and we'd hang out and we'd go out, and we kind of became friends again, like we used to hang out back in college.
He fucking crushed me. That was the first Murph I did. He's full body, or doing the whole thing, and on the first mile out, I was a good runner. That was my part. Like, I'm a good runner. He was like, I did like a 6-minute mile right out of the chute. He's body armor and did like a 5-minute mile.
So it's a funny story about that guy and Murph.
Holy crap.
That I would, there's a guy recently named Hunter McIntyre, if anybody knows the name. He's big time into OCR racing, one of the big names in that field. And he went out and broke the known record for Murph, which was like 35 minutes. Alex actually holds the record for Murph if 35 minutes is the record. It's the on record. But Alex had Murph in under 30 minutes with body armor.
Jesus.
Yeah. Okay. Like 29 and some change. And he could consistently do that because he used to do it all the time. It was a big workout for them because it's things that they need to be in tune with. I mean, moving extra weight along with your body, having that spatial awareness and being able to move quick with it. Like, the guy could pump out push-ups. His max rep push-up when he was going into the Navy on the test was like, it was fucking stupid. Like 140. Yeah, dude, it was dumb. And I'm over here like 70, it was fucking stupid. I thought 70 was killer. He's just like, I mean, if nobody knows what he looks like, but this dude had legit tits, man. Like,
dude was like,
his chest was so big and barrel, like you couldn't wrap your arms around him, and he had a waist like size 30.
He totally was 300. He was bigger than 300. Great guy. I know you knew him better than I did, but left an impact on me. Okay, we're gonna shift a second.
Yeah.
And we're gonna have you back because you mean too much to the show and to me personally. Shelly's in the background, probably doing your second passion right now, which is wine. We'll talk about that too, because you're involved in a lot of things. I mean, you don't live life slow. You slow down. I get it. I know you. You're very zen about how you like dial in the meaningful things in your life. And we're all like scattered in the world right now because it's fucking crazy. But you've got a lot of interest, and I'm interested to see how you dial that into the specific things that you really love doing. And I know one of them is wine, right?
Yeah.
You're a member of a wine club. You're starting a whole new venture there. CBD is a whole nother thing. You're in real estate. You're in a lot of different facets in your life. But even this weekend, you took time. Family's meaningful to you. And your sons are everything. So you guys go out and went camping this weekend. I'm not going to tell anybody where, but it was down the street when the storm blew through. But that's what's really cool is to, as I put in the podcast that you'll see on the main page, As the World Works, we talked about the song the other day, you and I, if you were going to give somebody a younger version of yourself or some young soul, one piece of advice, it would be from the lyrics of Leonard Skinner, from the mom who says, be a simple kind of man, be something you love and understand, which is challenging, right? Until you find out how short life is and it really shrinks it up. And you lose meaningful friends like Alex. I lost one of my best friends a couple years ago, Phil Biancalana, of pancreatic cancer in a year. And it was like a flip switch. This guy's my age. We've hung out together for years. My mom's passed, your father's passed, right?
Yeah.
So, and those aren't fleeting moments. They have impact on what you do with the rest of it. So anyway, I appreciate you, brother. You mean a lot. We're going to continue this conversation, Joe Rogan style. We'll do it for another hour and a half, but I got to go catch up with you and Shelly right now.
Yeah.
We'll talk more in the near future. Anything else you want to impart on our?
Let's touch just one last little piece here, talking about imparting wisdom on the younger crowd.
Yep.
So yeah, I am busy and I bring that on myself. I sometimes hate it and I don't recommend it because it makes you go crazy and it makes you lose focus on some things very easily. I have 4 different directions that I go currently. The CBD thing was just kind of a monetary thing that I saw out of the gate, required a little bit of front leg work. Wrong time for it. It doesn't always work out. It's not unsuccessful. I will say this. If I could go back and revisit some things, it might be a little different if you can just dive in, pick your one thing and do it really well. And I think that's what I felt like with the gym. And then we could kind of start moving into other things. I have seen a lot of younger folks try to finger too much stuff at once, right? Like, I want this, I want this, I want this. I want to do this business, but I also want to do this, but you haven't done this yet. And you haven't done this. So what's going to happen if you have yourself spaced across these 4 things that you really maybe know nothing about, versus diving into one, getting it running, diving into another, getting it running, diving into another, getting it running, and then making them work for you. I think that's the wisdom. That's not new wisdom at all, but I think people need to hear that shit, because if you think you have a passion, figure it out, dive into it a little bit deeper, because you find out really quick if it's actually a passion or just an interest.
When do you stop that though? That's the question. There is exploration, right? So no one today has that blueprint for their life. So it's a journey of figuring out 18, 19, 20, 24. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't even know who I was. I had no clue. Looking back, I would have been like, do that thing. At the same time, I wouldn't be where I am today. But in looking back, I would have said, quit being so ADD about everything and exploring so many options. So I hear you. Today, though, say someone, for example, says, I love what you're saying about opening a gym. I love CrossFit. I love a niche. I love the thing. And they go to work, for a conglomerate. What do you call them? Globo boxes or whatever. And that shuts down because retail and gyms and everything shuts down. So what do I do now? Because this is what I love. These are challenging times. There's a lot of questions. So I hear you, and I agree 100%. Chasing too many things at once is kind of an entitlement in a way. And it's a disservice to yourself. And as a parent, it's a disservice to your children to say, try everything, we'll figure it out. And so, teach your children the way they should go, not the way you see them to go. But at the same time, you can observe things and say, man, he's really strong there for your sons, or she's really got a gift, and guide them. They're going to figure out their own way and get attached.
And it may change. It's ever changing. I think the one consistent with me has been in fitness, but really what I've actually figured out over the last few years is it's not just fitness, it's helping. And it's being of service in some way that really is fulfilling for me and actually fills me up. Just going into the gym and talking to people and coaching them in certain movements doesn't fill my cup at all. It's figuring out ways to satisfy the rest of their life, whether it's a female that wants to look better for her family or her husband or herself, or some guy that wants to get off of blood pressure medication, and figuring out how to do that. And then you see them do it. And that's the fulfilling piece. And it took me a long time to figure that out because I didn't know what the fuck I wanted to do. Nobody does, ever. You find something you like, and then you figure more out about it. And then you find out, hey, I really want to do this. Or you find out, I really don't want to do it. I think that's something that's lost on people, is the continual learning is what keeps you interested.
Do you think we ever get it done?
No. And if you do, you should never be satisfied, ever. Because the moment you are, that's when everything starts going downhill. I always want the next best thing.
Comfortable though, when you feel like things are like, they're pretty comfortable.
Yeah, complacency was big in my life. That could be a whole nother story all in itself. And that's what led me to the direction that I want to head now.
Good.
Complacency fucking sucks, man. And it's the killer of all dreams. So don't fall into that trap. Complacency comes in many forms. In that initial form was working for a bank where I could see what the future held, but there's a cap to that future. I want a future with no cap. I'm still working towards that future. It ain't going to happen tomorrow. But my future has no cap. And that's what's really cool about being an entrepreneur and owning your own shit and doing all the things that you want to do. Because I don't work for a bank where somebody can say, hey, we're going to pay you this much this year. And really, that's about all we can do. Sorry. Well, I don't jive with that. So
yeah. What's market rate for Brandon? You don't have out there. Yeah. Dude, I appreciate you. Seriously, we're going to do this again very
I'd love to.
soon. There's so much more to talk about. So thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, brother. Later.